With the 2025 MSI having come to an end, it's clear that Europe is the worst region in the world of League of Legends. This year, not even G2 was able to hold their own in the international stage. But this collapse of European teams wasn't a surprise to anyone. Even EU fans knew their region was cooked before the tournament even started. Western teams have been getting worse and worse over the years, and Eastern teams have been getting a lot better. Only FlyQuest managed to put a convincing performance against the LPL second seed because of a masterclass from their jungler Inspired. And this FlyQuest is one of the strongest Western teams of the last few years. The slow decline of Western teams creates something I call the gap. Or maybe we should call it a canyon at this point because it is large. But have you wondered why? Why is it that Eastern teams are so much better than the West? Why is it that Korea seems to have an infinite amount of talent coming from the tier 2 and academy teams, and the same isn't true for regions like Europe and NA? That's what we're gonna look at in this video, and no, the answer isn't because one side of the world speaks English and the other one doesn't. So what does the East do better? To answer this question, we don't have to look very far. In a recent interview, Kajal asked Tabe, the coach for China's first seed AL, about their practice schedule, and his answer was basically this.
Yeah, we never rest. Maybe 2 blocks is impossible. Like for me, like 3 blocks is common sense. Sometimes maybe we'll feel very tired and frustrated. Then I will take my team and go down because Vancouver, they are very nice field. Yeah, when
so you'll go for a walk?
Go for a walk and
talk about it.
Look at the sea, look at the lovely pets. There are many doggies.
Yeah.
And I will say, okay, now we are human.
And now back to Scream.
Yeah, and back to Scream. Yeah, but if you go for a walk, you have no break.
Okay.
Yeah, because you already consume the time.
That's your break.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, you guys are crazy.
He explained that AL does triple scrim blocks instead of the single or double scrim blocks usually played by European teams. So immediately we understand that they practice more than Western teams, they have less days off, and they play more hours on a daily basis. By practicing more, they play against better opponents on average, which elevates the whole Eastern League scene. That's an easy fix then. EU just needs to practice more and will be the best at League of Legends, right? No. Even if EU suddenly decided to adopt Eastern work habits, we still wouldn't be as good as them. League of Legends is huge in both Korea and China compared to the West. So much so that it is ingrained in their culture. People go out to internet cafes to play League with their friends for fun. If I even suggested that to my schoolmates where I'm from, I would get bullied for it. As a result, people spend more time playing video games, and due to these internet cafes being very affordable, a wider range of people have access to high-end computers to play League. In Korea, esports is taken seriously, like traditional sports in the West. In Portugal, kids grow up idolizing Cristiano Ronaldo. And in the West, a lot of kids grow up aspiring to become pro gamers. In Korea, Faker is much more than a League of Legends player, he is a celebrity. And the League of Legends competitive scene is viewed by a big part of the population. Let's take the qualification match for this last MSI as an example. T1 Hejali had approximately 2 million peak viewers. Usually, Korean viewership is between 25 to 40% of the total LCK viewership. So let's say that 700k of those 2 million views came from Korea. Korea's population is approximately 51 million people. So that means that 1.37% of the population watched the match. Now let's compare that to Europe. The final for G2 vs Koi had a peak of 500k. Europe's population is around 745 million, so that is a 0.067% of the population. If Korea was the size of Europe, the peak viewership for T1 HLE would have been 10.2 million. So right away, we've established two things. There is a work culture difference between the West and the East, and a cultural difference on how esports is viewed by the majority of people. But there are still a lot of questions left unanswered, and the main one for me is young talent. And for this one, the percentage of people that are interested in League shouldn't really matter. We should talk about raw numbers. How many people actually play League in Korea versus Europe? So I asked my friend ChatGPT to give me the estimate player numbers on Korean versus European service. And this is what he came up with. 2.5 to 4 million for Korea and 17 to 20 million for Europe. We have 5 times the amount of players. So why isn't Europe producing any talent? And the answer can't just be the cultural difference we talked about, since Europe has dominated other video games like Counter-Strike for well over a decade. For some of you, this question might have an obvious answer, but most people probably never even thought about it. It's just become the norm that Koreans are better than everyone else at League. But looking at their competitive ecosystem, it's pretty easy to understand the reason as to why this happens. Scouts and pro coaches actively monitor the rank solo queue ladder to spot new talent. 15, 16-year-old players are frequently picked up by academy teams and get elite coaching right away. They live in team houses, scream and get nutritional and mental support. In Korea, besides the LCK, there's also the LCK Challenger League, a league below the LCK where all the academy teams compete. Every LCK org has a challenger team, and after some time of receiving coaching, when these players reach the age where they can legally play in the league, they are put to the test. And if they do well, they often get picked up by LCK teams. This was the case for players like Zeus, Chovy, and Faker. The best of all time and some of the best players of 2025 were picked up at a young age and molded to become these players that they are today. This is a proven system that creates the best players in the world. So that's how Korea does things. Now, what about the West? The ecosystem in Europe is very different, but it has some similarities. We got the ERLs, aka the regional leagues, and the EU Masters Tournament, where representatives from each league go to compete at the European scale. We also got some academy teams for LEC orgs like KC Blue, Vitality B, and Heretics Academy. So now you might be asking yourself, could this system work in Europe? As of right now, no. Because there isn't nearly enough money in the tier 2 scene, a lot of players get paid very little and some don't even get paid at all. Most of Europe has no actual esports infrastructure, so players accept this because there are simply no other alternatives. For many people, it's either playing without getting paid in hopes that they'll get scouted to the LEC, or just giving up on their dreams. Those are the only two options. They are paid in clout. And for the ones that succeed and are given a chance in tier 1, if they don't immediately put on amazing performances, they just get replaced by the players that have been playing there for longer. A lot of ex-pros say that the LEC is more about nepotism and having connections in the scene than it is about actual talent, and we've got some pretty concrete evidence of this. LEC orgs often pick up older recycled players rather than giving ERL talent a chance, players that have been underperforming for years but still go from team to team instead of being replaced. Coaching hires and roster decisions are frequently relationship based, and if you don't have someone on the inside vouching for you, it's much harder to get a chance at a spot. This isn't the case for every single team in the LEC, but even the teams that do proper scouting many times prefer the safety of picking up a Korean player, since it is much cheaper than investing in bringing up local talent. So the main problems here are money, nepotism, and straight up incompetence. There is no talent being brought up, teams don't practice enough, and a lot of people in the scene are paycheck stealing. Is there any hope for Europe at all? As it stands, absolutely not. Rookie talent will keep being ignored, and the gap between the East and the West will keep growing. But what if something was to change? What if, for example, 2 guest slots were added to the LEC? Let's imagine that throughout the year, tier 2 teams would accumulate points based on their results. And at the end of the year, a battle for the 2 guest spots would happen between the teams with the most points and the 2 slot holders. What would happen to the European League scene in this scenario? Well, for one, orgs would have an incentive to put money in the scene again, since building a strong tier 2 roster and making it into tier 1 would become very viable. This would directly influence the growth of new players and the interest in the tier 2 scene. Now, let's imagine something else. What if the org from tier 2 actually outperforms some of the bottom LEC teams? We've seen it happen in Valorant already. The Guard, a tier 2 team, managed to get to an international final and is dominating the Americas region under G2. If this happened in League as well, it would probably improve the overall level of play in the LEC, and by proving that rookies can make an impact on the scene, LEC teams could finally realize that cycling the same washed players might not be in their greatest interest. New orgs or old ones might come back to try competing for a spot, and the tier 2 scene would be brought back to life. This is of course a more optimistic scenario, but in my opinion a realistic one, and the easiest way to make our region more competitive. Do I think this will happen? Probably not, at least not right away. But some drastic changes are needed in the West, otherwise we will keep failing. Maybe in a distant future we'll be a region that cultivates talent, but for now the best thing we can do to achieve good results internationally is building all-star rosters, combining the best players from EU and NA. Here's what Nemesis had to say about EU's disappointing international results.
First of all, nothing's gonna change. The people coping that they have a magical solution, they don't. Nothing's gonna change. 2026 is gonna be the same, 2027 is gonna be the same. It's basically going to be the same until League dies or Korea stops caring about it. Like, that's just reality, or China. It's just not gonna change. We are just simply worse than them because of culture and because of the environment. It will not ever change. Again, the only thing that we can do to combat and trying to beat Asia, which will happen from time to time, is by making good rosters. That is literally the simplest and most efficient thing we can possibly do. But if you're following all the roster changes that have happened in the last 5 years, well, let's just say roster building is not very strong.
Even though this is a very pessimistic prospect, if no transformation of the European scene happens, things will stay the same. And Sanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. You can make a case for Europe saying that EWC went much better than MSI, but the only reason for that was the best of ones. Plus, EWC is a Mickey Mouse tournament, so I don't even count those results as being serious. The last year EU was competitive in the international stage was in 2020? That was 5 years ago, and since then things have been going downhill for the West. But what do you think? Do you think that Europe is slowly improving, or is it only gonna get worse from here? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video if you've enjoyed it. I'm trying to get to 10k subs before the end of the year, so help a brother out. And if you think I missed anything, let me know. I appreciate all the support, you guys are amazing, and as usual, I'll be seeing you guys next time. Bye.